Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the Railway. Today I've got some new 3D printed goodies to share with you. I still absolutely love 3D printing and I probably churn out one or two new designs every single week. And I think they're pretty cool most of the time, but the thing is that there's normally not enough there to justify a whole video around them. But today I thought I've done enough little projects that I can put them all together into one video and it should at least be somewhat watchable. So most of them are models, new models that I've come up with, and I'm really looking forward to showing you those because I've made quite some progress with them. But some of them are not models, some of them are accessories, things relating to models, but are not actually models. So that's what I'm going to show you to start with. Now, the first item came about because I'm starting to make a lot of models these days that have loads of little parts, and it's quite difficult to keep track of all these little parts. It's difficult to find somewhere good to put them where they won't get lost or mixed up with all the other small parts. So I came up with a bit of a solution. I designed this, and this is a stack of boxes. It's not particularly stylistic or anything, it's literally just designed to suit a purpose, but it's got one or two cool features. So as you can probably gather, these are stackable boxes, which is actually really important to me because I don't have that much room up here in the loft these days, and this way I can stack several containers into a very tiny footprint, which is awesome. And because I've just not bought these off the shelf and I've designed and printed them myself, they can be tailored to my exact specifications. So here I've actually got several different boxes of all different heights and different numbers of compartments. I think this one is, yeah, that one is the 3-compartment one. So what have we got? We've got a deep one here, and in here I've got some sort of model parts already, and I'll show you what those are later on. We've got sort of half height, 6-compartment piece, which is cool. A really low height, which I think will be handy for maybe holding screws and small parts. And then of course the deep ones, which are deep. And then the 3-compartment one, which is good for separating different sorts of parts very easily. And then there's a lid, of course, as well. Now, as you can also see, these have got magnets installed into the bottom and the top, yep, of each container, so that you can stack them together like so. And obviously they will stack in any formation you like. And the magnets are pretty strong, so that you can, put the whole stack together like this, and then the lid, of course, and you can even lift them up like this and have them stay together. Not recommended, of course, if it's full of small parts. Much safer to hold from the bottom, but yeah, for convenience sake, they sort of stay together. They don't just fall apart, which is important. So I've got a few changes to make to this. I'm going to make the footprint of them a little bit smaller so that they fit in a little bit more easily. At the moment they're very tight, and I don't think they need to be that tight, and it does mean that if you've got sort of a different 3D printer, then they might not fit together. So if I shrink the bottoms a little bit more, that will remove that problem. But yeah, I'm going to put these up on Thingiverse, so if you want to download them for free and print them yourself, you absolutely can do, no problem at all. They're not pretty, like I say, they're just designed for a specific purpose. I could have made them nicer looking, but at the time I just wanted something I could use. So there you go, stackable model parts boxes. Up next then, you always hear about PLA+, that is the plastic that the 3D printers use to create the objects. You always hear about how strong the stuff is, so that got me thinking, how strong is it? Can I actually use it for other things? So to test it out, I designed this. This is a bracket, a little bit like the ones that I use for my shelves up here. I've got tons of shelves, I add many of them every year. Will these 3D printed brackets be strong enough to hold a shelf of locomotives? So I 3D printed a couple of those brackets and I've put up this shelf using them. But hold your horses though, is it really a smart idea to put hundreds of pounds worth of potentially very heavy models onto a shelf with 3D printed brackets when I have no idea of what sort of load they can handle? Well, I mean, it seems pretty strong. Very, very strong, in fact. But that wasn't enough for me. So what I did was, before I put this wooden shelf into place, I put just one bracket onto the wall without the shelf, And then I looked at another shelf which is identical in size but already full of locomotives, and I weighed each of those locos and came up with a total weight for the whole shelf, including the wooden shelf itself, which is quite heavy as well. And then what I did was I filled up a big shopping bag, a bag for life, a strong one, with books. Books that in total had the same weight as the shelf and all of the locomotives on it, and I hung that bag of books off just one of the brackets. Now obviously in practice it will be two brackets holding all of that weight, but here I just hung it onto one and left it overnight, and in the morning I came back up and it was all still there, it was still on the wall, so I know that those brackets are strong enough between them to hold at least that amount of weight, and even if I was somehow to double the amount of weight held by the shelf, then it would probably still be fine. So I've started to put some locos on the shelf and I'm confident that it isn't going to collapse under their weight. So that's awesome. PLA, very handy for that. Next, it is time to move on to some models. So last year, during a trip I took to the Battlefield Line Railway, I'll pop a link up into the top corner now if you want to see that video, I took a handful of photos of this decrepit wagon. And as you can see, it's a wooden wagon and it doesn't look like it's been used for a while. It's not in the greatest condition, but it did capture my imagination a little bit, and I was just getting started with 3D printing at the time. So I decided to take a load of photos of the thing with the idea of maybe making a model of it. Now I had those photos for absolutely ages and I never did anything with them, but finally I decided to do it. Now I've later learned that that wagon is called a Palvan, and here is my model of it. Now it is quite a basic model, as you can see. It's not got tons of detail on it, but I was able to use those photos that I took, just basic photos without any measurements, and create this model. Now I don't know whether it's perfectly accurate or not. I don't think I have a diagram of an actual Palvan to check, so I don't know, but I think personally, I don't think it's too bad. So with a little bit of study and a little bit of observation, it is possible to generate a model from a series of photos. And if you can put something in those photos for scale, like a ruler or something that you know the size of, then that job can be made even easier. So that was a fun little project, and this Palvan I've actually sold to my members. I do a new wagon every month, and this thing I was able to sell to them for £10, and quite a few people enjoyed it. And don't forget, if you want to become a Sam's Trains member, you can join for as little as £1.99 a month, and then every month I do release a new wagon, which goes for £10 or sometimes 12 if it's something a little bit special. So that is one of the models I've been working on. That is a BR Palvan. So clearly it is possible to take photos of real life railway vehicles and turn those into models, but it's not a very exact science, and it can take quite a long time to really study those photos and get accurate dimensions out of them. A much more efficient, faster and precise way of doing things is to use diagrams. And so after the Palvan, which I did quite a while ago, I started buying as many books and diagrams and collections of different drawings that I possibly could. And one book that was really good for wagons was this thing. This is called Historic Wagon Drawings in 4mm scale, which are drawn by F.J. Roche. And this book is seriously awesome. I mean, I won't show you much, but it's got so many different diagrams inside it. All sorts of different wagons, tankers, vans, brake vans, open wagons, and all labelled with all of the dimensions on them. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. All very well drawn, got all the rivets in position. So this is just fantastic for measuring and developing models. And I've done quite a few out of this book already, which you're going to see in just a second. So yeah, awesome book, Historic Wagon Drawings in 4mm scale. And Mr. Roche, well, I don't know if he did this. I think they might have been submitted to a magazine originally, the drawings. But there is a book like this with locomotives in it, which I've also got, and also wagons and passenger carriages and such, which is pretty cool as well. So an absolutely brilliant book, and exactly what I needed to start making accurate models nice and quickly. So now that I had access to some much more precise drawings and diagrams of real wagons, I decided it might be nice to try and up the stakes a little bit and try and create a model that is a little bit more realistic. So my plan was to design a new chassis. I was going to go through that book and pick a chassis and then develop a range of different bodies for that chassis so that I can make several different wagons with it. So in the end, I went with this chassis. I took some photocopies of it. Well, I scanned it into my computer and blew it up to double size so that I can more easily measure the model. And using those scans and studying them, I was able to produce this chassis, which I call Chassis C, very quickly. Now, in real life, this would be a 16-foot long chassis, and the whole model here was just derived from the drawings in that book. Now, this chassis is quite a lot more realistic, and it's got quite a few improvements over the chassis you've seen me design before. So the first major change is the brake rigging. This is hugely different to what I've produced before. As you can see, much more realistic. You can see the brake pads very clearly, and they're somewhat close to the wheels. Obviously not too close though, otherwise that would cause clearance issues. I've also, at long last, found a way of fitting the hand-powered brake handle onto these models. And these are quite difficult parts to design for 3D printing because they're not just straight rods, and of course you've got to have a way of fitting them. And for a long time I didn't think it was possible, but finally it is, and I've managed to design it. As you can see, the chassis has a realistic underframe with all the framework represented, and instead of using those horrible pegs that I used to use to fit the bodies onto the chassis, this one just has screw holes so that I can screw the bodies onto the chassis. I think that is much, much better. This chassis also has the little cylinder on it, which makes this a fitted wagon, so it's got sort of vacuum powered brakes. The axle boxes are much finer, and all of the springs and such are more accurate because they are derived from the drawing. And finally, I devised a new set of buffers, which are again much finer and more realistic. So as you can see, that chassis is quite a lot better than anything I've done before, and I thought, why not try and come up with a body to put onto it that also ups the game a little bit in terms of the level of detail. So I came up with this body. This is a I think it's a Great Western 5-plank wagon. It's a few weeks now since I designed this thing, but it's another one that came out of the F.J. Roche book. So again, working from a diagram made this so much easier to design, and it is pretty similar to the other wagons that I've designed in the past, except, as you might notice, this thing has rivets on it. And this is a new thing that I've come up with. Previously, I did not think it was possible to have rivets 3D print on an FDM wagon. I just thought there isn't the precision there. Well, I started to do some experimentation into that, and although the rivets that an FDM 3D printer can produce are not particularly fine or perfectly round, I think they do look better than if they were not there at all. So we've got a body, we've got a chassis, time to show you the result, and here it is. So, chassis to start with, as you can see, all of the underframe detailing has come out quite nicely, and I have just glued the brake rod into place. Looking underneath, you can see we've got the screws that hold the body onto the chassis, and they do not poke through into the wagon, which was quite a difficult thing to get right, but it worked in the end. And I think these buffers look quite a bit better than the previous ones as well. I've really tweaked the printing settings with these so that they print without stringing or any messes like that. So it really is just pull them off the 3D printer and plug them straight into the chassis. So the open wagon body came out really nicely as well. Now this is completely untreated, it hasn't been painted or sanded or had the gaps filled in. This is literally pulled straight off the 3D printer. So imagine what you could do if you took the time to paint this up and fill in the gaps. I think it would be really cool looking. So I've got a chassis C now, which is 16 feet long. Well, it's not, obviously it's a model, but the real thing would be 16 feet long. And I've developed a couple of other bodies for it. We've got this one, this is looking at it in CAD. This is, I'm not even sure what railway this wagon came from, but it is pre-grouping, 1800s. And again, this is done to a similar standard. It's got the rivets on it, and it's got quite an ornamental looking end, as you can see. It's got almost Roman pillars going up the end, which I really liked. And here is my model. Now this has actually been put onto a prototype chassis C, so it's got a few different buffers on it and such, but you get the idea. You can see roughly how it should look. And again, the rivets have come out fairly nicely. I do like the ends of this van. I think it is one of the nicer looking vans I've been able to produce, and this is going to be going out for members at some point. Maybe it has already by the time this video goes out, but again, this is going to be a tenner, even with the extra underframe details. So I'm pretty pleased with that one. So clearly designing a new chassis with a much higher level of detail does have one major drawback, and that is that the existing chassis that I've spent so long working on now look a little bit naff in comparison. So what I've decided to do is take the original chassis that I designed, that looks like this. This is what I did right at the beginning of my 3D printing adventure as just an experiment, and I've decided I'm going to upgrade it and try and bring it up to the same standard as that new chassis. Now it has been upgraded once before. I changed it to look like this a few months ago so that it did have some sort of freight brake rigging on the underframe, but it still wasn't particularly realistic. It still used those pegs that hold the bodies on, and as a result the framework was quite unrealistic. So I upgraded the chassis. As you can see, it looks quite a lot better in CAD, and I have printed out all of the parts, but I have not tried to put this thing together yet. I've waited until this video, so that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to put it together, glue it together for the first time, put some wheels in, put a body on, and see if the new chassis A actually looks any good. Okay, let's try. There. Okay, so here are all of the different parts needed to assemble this new chassis. Looks like it's going to be dead complicated, but actually it's not. It's been designed to be very, very easy and not at all fiddly to put together, but we'll see whether that turns out to be true. So the first thing is going to be to put the wheels in position, and I'm doing this first because I don't want to disturb any of the detailing by putting the wheels in later on. So that is that. All right, nice and free wheels, that's cool. I guess what I will do, I guess I could put the buffers in now, actually. Now, ideally, you are to glue these buffers into position using a needle and some basic super glue. But I'm not going to do that because, as you can see, they're quite a tight fit, and I think for this purpose, they will stay in position without me gluing them. So, 4 buffers into position. Yeah, I like these buffers a lot. These are much, much better than the ones I used to make. All right, and then for the brake rigging, now the brake rigging is now keyed so that, let's see, am I getting the right or the wrong? So this is the wrong one, and it will not fit. It will not fit into the chassis, so you can't get them the wrong way. This one should fit. Yes, it does. All right, so all I'm going to do is take a needle and my super glue and put a little bit of glue into the holes. Not much, obviously, because it's not going to be under any stress, and then the part can go into position like that. And it also helps having the wheels in so that you can make sure that they're straight and are not going to be touching the wheels as they spin. So that's awesome, and it did fit, which is cool. Little glue, again it's keyed, so this will fit in only one way. That's a nice easy fit actually, isn't it? Perfect. Okay, and the wheels still spin and everything, which is good. So before I put the brake levers on, the hand-operated ones, I'm going to put the body on because that will give me a second to let the glue dry. So this is a body that I developed a few months ago. This doesn't have rivets or anything special like that on it, but I have converted it so that it doesn't have the holes in the base for pegs anymore. It's got the little screw holes. And I've designed this so that the screw holes can still be accessed even with the axles in position, which is handy. So hopefully that will work. Now this is the first time I've ever screwed a body onto this chassis, so I haven't gotten the heights correct. So it could be that these screws do poke out of the bottom, or possibly even they won't bite at all and the body will come straight off. That does take a little bit of fettling, but for a first test we'll see how it goes. I think we might get away with it because this is an older wagon body and I tended to make the floors a bit thicker back in the days I made this. So we might be alright. Yeah, pretty much alright. Yeah, you can't see the screws poking through at all. So that is perfect, and it looks pretty good, I have to say. That's nice, isn't it? Right, so now let's try and put the hand brakes on. So I'm trying to remember now which way these go. So they are the same pieces, 2 identical pieces, and these are printed flat, amazingly, and they do have 2 little spikes on them for fitting onto the wagon. So I'm just going to check the fit to start with. So you have one that goes in there, and one that pokes in there, and as you can see they fit perfectly, which is awesome. But instead of using super glue to fit these, I'm going to try and use a little bit of PVA glue because you've got a bit more time to work with that, and it should dry clear and it shouldn't make all that horrible mist that the super glue makes. So let's try that. So a little glue in each of the holes. The holes very precisely placed. and 3D printed like that, no drilling required, which is handy. And then into the holes. This one might need a bit of a push. Perfect, look at that, nice. And let's try and do the other side. Hopefully I won't disturb the other one by doing this. Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to be any good or not. Maybe super glue will be better, but as you can see they fit, so they are the right size and everything. And then I guess I better finish this off by putting the NEM couplings in, just because I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to design some couplings that actually function properly. Alright, so this is looking cool. There you go. A brand new wagon, fully remastered, with a nice realistic chassis on it. Ooh, that is nice. Let me show you this a little bit up close then. So there you go, you can see it a little bit better there. It's not bad, is it? Not bad at all. To say that this is made at home for next to nothing, not bad at all. And in fact, if I wasn't a reviewer, I didn't have to buy models for a living, I would probably never buy another ready-to-run model again. I'd probably buy a resin 3D printer instead and just make my own, because this proves that you can do it. So yeah, it's all looking good. I think the brake discs are looking good. They're not too close to the wheels because I just don't like the thought of them sometimes touching and causing drag. So they're far enough away so that they'll never do that. But also they're not so far that they're totally unrealistic. And I guess if I flip it onto its back, you can see the underframe detail, which is great, isn't it? That's not bad at all. Again, with a resin printer, you could put all of the sort of springs in there under there, but as this is for me, this is just fine. But of course, if you want more than that, all it takes really is a bit more design work. So, happy with that. Let's get this and the other new wagons that I've made down onto the track, and we'll do just a quick run with them just to make sure everything's working as it should. And this will be the first time I've done that actually, so very exciting. Okay, let's couple these straight away, no messing about. Because always remember, it's only the pro manufacturers that get couplings wrong. Us amateurs seem to manage it fine somehow. So there you go, yeah, no problem. Let's try it around the track though, just to make sure that they're okay on curves and everything. There we go. Yeah, looking good so far. That Palvan looks a bit daft though. They're all early wagons except that one. But still, just to check the performance, no problem at all. Speaking of revisiting older models then, I'm going to move on to the final item of today, and that is this, the world's smallest passenger coach brake version. Ever since I made that first video all those months ago about producing the world's smallest passenger coach, in inverted commas, people have said, we need a brake, you got to do a brake. So I took the original passenger model and remodeled the back end of it to make a brake version. So it's quite basic, it's got the same roof and everything, and there's no interior in the brake section because there's only two tiny little openings where the doors are. But as you can see, I now have a brake version, and this is also going out to members at some point. Probably already has by the time this video goes out, but yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. So now I could I haven't actually got any of the main passenger coaches, the composites or whatever, but I could make some of those, maybe two of them, and then I could have a proper train with a brake on the end, which I think is pretty fun. So there you go, there's a last look at it, the brake version of the tiny passenger coach. So that is what I've been working on recently. It's been a lot of fun. I still really enjoy designing this stuff, and it's all done in SketchUp. I pay for SketchUp because I use it commercially, but you don't have to. It is completely free to use if you are non-commercial. So yeah, if you think you might enjoy it, give it a try, design some basic stuff. I would probably go for the little containers myself, quite easy to design. Very easy to print, nothing really complex about them, so you can get started very easily with things like that, and you will learn a lot just doing something basic like that. So don't ever think that basic models and designs are a waste of time. because they never are. But that's all I have to show you for now. Do comment down below, let me know what you think, what's your favourite item, and this thing is going to be available on Thingiverse, so if you want to download it and print it for yourself, or if you've got a use for it, then you can absolutely do that. But for now, that is all I have to say. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you very soon with some more videos. Alright, cheers everybody, take care.